The air in the arena was electric that night, crackling with an energy that only Monday Night Raw can generate. Thousands of fans packed into the venue, their voices creating a wall of sound that reverberated through every corner of the building. The show had been building toward something monumental all evening, with tension simmering just beneath the surface, ready to explode at any moment. Nobody could have predicted just how violent and shocking the events were about to become. What transpired would be talked about for years to come, dissected and analyzed by fans and critics alike, cementing itself as one of the most brutal and unexpected moments in recent WWE history. Paul Heyman stood in the center of the ring, microphone in hand, doing what he does best. The wise man, as he's come to be known, has spent decades perfecting the art of the promo, weaving words together like a master craftsman. His voice dripped with that signature blend of arrogance and intelligence that has made him one of the most compelling figures in professional wrestling. He was in the middle of one of his trademark speeches, building towards some grand proclamation about his client, about power, about the future of WWE. The crowd hung on his every word, some booing, some cheering, all captivated by the sheer force of his presence. But there was something different about this particular night. Heyman's words had an edge to them, a sharpness that went beyond his usual provocative statements. He was pushing buttons, pulling on threads that perhaps should have been left alone. He spoke about legacy, about who truly ran WWE, about the difference between those who built empires and those who merely inherited them. Every sentence seemed carefully calculated to provoke, to antagonize, to draw out a response from someone specific. The camera operators seemed to sense it too, their lenses capturing every subtle expression on Heyman's face, every knowing smirk, every carefully timed pause. Then it happened. The music hit. That familiar, bone-chilling entrance theme that has signaled the arrival of the game for over 2 decades thundered through the arena's sound system. Triple H's music is more than just a song. It's a warning, an announcement that something significant is about to occur. The crowd erupted into a deafening roar, a mixture of excitement and anticipation flooding through the venue like a tidal wave. Every head turned toward the entrance ramp, every phone camera raised to capture what was about to unfold. But Triple H didn't appear on the ramp. The music continued to play, building in intensity, but the familiar figure didn't emerge through the curtain. Confusion rippled through the audience. Heyman's expression shifted from confident smugness to something else, something that might have been concern if you looked closely enough. He adjusted his position in the ring, his eyes fixed on the entranceway, waiting. The commentators at ringside began speculating about what was happening, their voices rising with urgency and confusion. Then the music stopped abruptly. The sudden silence was almost deafening after such volume. The arena held its collective breath. Paul Heyman stood alone in the ring, microphone still in hand, his usual bravado faltering ever so slightly. He opened his mouth to speak, perhaps to make some cutting remark about Triple H's apparent no-show, but he never got the chance. Triple H emerged not from the entrance ramp but from the crowd. He had been there all along, moving through the sea of fans like a predator stalking its prey. The camera caught him vaulting over the barricade, his face a mask of pure, unbridled fury. This wasn't the calculated, methodical Triple H who had been running WWE's creative operations. This wasn't the suit-wearing executive who appeared in boardroom segments. This was the game, the cerebral assassin, the man who had built a reputation on being one of the most vicious and ruthless competitors in WWE history. Heyman turned just in time to see Triple H sliding into the ring, but there was no time to react, no time to escape, no time to talk his way out of what was coming. The expression on Heyman's face transformed from confusion to absolute terror in the span of a heartbeat. He dropped the microphone, the sound of it hitting the canvas amplified through the arena speakers, and began backing away, his hands raised in a gesture that was half surrender, half plea for mercy. But mercy was not on Triple H's mind. Not tonight. Not after whatever Heyman had said or done to push him to this breaking point. The game advanced with purpose, his eyes locked on Heyman with an intensity that was genuinely frightening. You could see the rage emanating from every pore, the years of professional respect and working relationship apparently shattered in this moment of pure violence. Heyman tried to create distance, backing into the corner, his mouth moving rapidly as he attempted to talk his way out of the situation. We couldn't hear what he was saying over the roar of the crowd, but you could read the desperation on his face. He was trying every trick in his considerable arsenal, every manipulation tactic he had perfected over decades in the business. But Triple H was beyond words now, beyond negotiation, beyond anything except the need to inflict punishment. The first strike came without warning. Triple H grabbed Heyman by his shirt, the fabric bunching in his fists as he yanked the wise man forward. Heyman's eyes went wide, his body going rigid with fear. Then Triple H delivered a devastating right hand that connected with Heyman's jaw with a sickening impact that could be heard even over the crowd noise. Heyman's head snapped back, his body crumpling, but Triple H didn't let him fall. He held him up, pulling him back into position for another blow. The second punch landed even harder than the first. Blood began to trickle from Heyman's mouth, a crimson stream that stood out starkly against his pale skin. The crowd was in absolute pandemonium, a mixture of shock and savage excitement at witnessing something so raw and unscripted feeling. Triple H's face remained a mask of fury, no satisfaction in his expression, only more anger, more need to continue the assault. But Triple H wasn't finished. Not even close. He released Heyman's shirt, letting him stagger backward, disoriented and bleeding. For a moment, it seemed like the assault might be over, that Triple H had vented his rage and would let it end there. But that moment of hope was shattered when the game grabbed Heyman again, this time positioning him for a move that made the entire arena gasp in anticipation and horror. Triple H lifted Heyman up, showcasing surprising strength as he hoisted the non-wrestler into position for his finishing move, the pedigree. Heyman's body was limp, offering no resistance, either from injury or from the understanding that resistance would be futile. The crowd was screaming, some in encouragement, others in genuine concern for Heyman's well-being. The commentators were yelling about how this had gone too far, how someone needed to stop this before Heyman was seriously injured. Time seemed to slow down as Triple H held Heyman in that precarious position. You could see every muscle in the game's arms tensed, every vein standing out, every fiber of his being focused on delivering this devastating maneuver. Heyman's arms hung limp at his sides, his face visible to the cameras, showing a mixture of pain, fear, and resignation to what was about to happen. Then Triple H jumped, driving Heyman's face into the canvas with all the force he could muster. The impact of the pedigree echoed through the arena like a gunshot. Heyman's body went completely slack, bouncing slightly from the force of the impact before settling motionless on the mat. The crowd's reaction was a mixture of gasps and cheers, the violence of the moment creating a complex emotional response from the audience. But Triple H still wasn't done. As Heyman lay motionless on the canvas, the game stood over him, chest heaving, sweat dripping from his face. His eyes were still wild with rage, his fists still clenched. He looked down at Heyman's prone form, and something in his expression suggested that the physical assault wasn't enough to satisfy whatever vendetta he was pursuing. Triple H reached down and grabbed Heyman again, pulling him up by his shirt. Heyman's body was dead weight now, offering no resistance, possibly unconscious from the pedigree. Blood stained his face and shirt, a testament to the brutality of the assault. The crowd was chanting now, some chanting Triple H's name, others calling for someone to intervene and stop this attack. Security personnel appeared at the top of the entrance ramp, but they hesitated, clearly uncertain about whether to interfere with someone of Triple H's position in the company. Referees began sliding into the ring, trying to position themselves between Triple H and Heyman, attempting to use their bodies as barriers to prevent further violence. But Triple H brushed them aside with ease, his focus remaining locked on Heyman. He positioned Heyman for another pedigree. The referees were grabbing at Triple H's arms, pleading with him to stop, their voices barely audible over the crowd noise. But the game shrugged them off, his strength and determination overpowering their attempts at intervention. He lifted Heyman again, the wise man's body completely limp now, and delivered a second pedigree even more vicious than the first. The impact seemed to shake the entire ring. Heyman's body bounced again before settling into a motionless heap. Medical personnel were rushing down the entrance ramp now, their presence adding a layer of genuine concern to the scripted violence. The line between performance and reality seemed to blur in this moment, with everyone in the arena wondering just how far this was going to go. Triple H finally released Heyman, letting him collapse fully onto the canvas. He stood over the fallen wise man, his chest heaving with exertion and continued rage. His music hit again, but it felt almost inappropriate now, a triumphant theme playing over what had been a savage and one-sided assault. Triple H didn't celebrate. He didn't play to the crowd. He simply stared down at Heyman with an expression that suggested this was far from over. The cameras caught every detail of the aftermath. Heyman lay in a crumpled heap in the center of the ring, blood visible on his face and staining the canvas beneath him. Medical personnel swarmed into the ring, immediately checking on him, calling for additional assistance. The crowd's energy had shifted from excitement to genuine concern, with many fans standing in stunned silence at what they had just witnessed. Triple H finally exited the ring, but he moved slowly, deliberately, his eyes never leaving Heyman's motionless form. He walked up the entrance ramp with his signature slow, purposeful stride, each step seeming to carry weight and meaning. At the top of the ramp, he turned back to look at the chaos in the ring one more time before disappearing behind the curtain. The show had to continue, but the energy had fundamentally changed. The commentators were scrambling to make sense of what had happened, trying to provide context and analysis, while also conveying appropriate concern for Heyman's condition. Replays showed the assault from multiple angles, each one making the violence look even more brutal and unforgiving. Slow-motion footage captured the impact of each punch, each pedigree, the way Heyman's body went limp and lifeless. In the ring, medical personnel had stabilized Heyman enough to carefully load him onto a stretcher. His eyes were closed, blood still visible on his face, his body completely motionless. The crowd watched in near silence as he was carefully lifted and wheeled toward the back, the gravity of the situation sinking in. What had started as another Monday Night Raw had transformed into something far more serious and shocking. But the questions remained. What had triggered this explosion of violence from Triple H? What had Heyman said or done to provoke such a brutal response? The answers seemed to lie in the weeks leading up to this moment, in a series of events and statements that had been building toward this inevitable confrontation. Paul Heyman had been running his mouth for weeks, as he's prone to do. But his recent promos had taken on a different tone, targeting not just Triple H's legacy as a performer, but his role in running the company. Heyman had made pointed comments about who truly deserved credit for WWE's current success, had questioned Triple H's creative decisions, had implied that the company's direction was misguided under his leadership. These weren't the usual heel promos designed to draw heat. These felt personal, cutting at the very core of Triple H's identity and life's work. There had been subtle jabs about Triple H's in-ring career, suggestions that his accomplishments had been handed to him rather than earned, insinuations about his relationship with the McMahon family being the true source of his power rather than his talent or business acumen. Heyman had been methodical in his verbal assault, each week adding another layer, another insult, another provocation. The game had remained largely silent throughout these attacks, maintaining his executive composure, showing the restraint expected of someone in his position. But those who knew Triple H's history understood that this silence was not weakness, but rather the calm before the storm. Throughout his career, Triple H has been known for his long-term planning, his ability to wait for the perfect moment to strike, his understanding that revenge is a dish best served cold. And tonight had been that moment. All the weeks of verbal abuse, all the insults and provocations, had finally broken through Triple H's professional restraint and unleashed the competitor that still lurked beneath the executive exterior. This wasn't just about defending his honor or responding to disrespect. This was about sending a message that there were lines that should not be crossed, boundaries that even the most protected personalities in WWE needed to respect. The social media response was immediate and explosive. Within minutes, clips of the assault were trending worldwide, with fans and media personalities weighing in on what they had witnessed. Some praised Triple H for delivering what Heyman had coming, for showing that he wasn't just an executive, but still a force to be feared. Others expressed concern about the level of violence, questioning whether it had gone too far, whether someone could actually be hurt in such an assault. Wrestling journalists began speculating about the real-life implications. Was there genuine heat between Triple H and Heyman? Had creative differences spilled over into real animosity? Or was this all part of a masterfully crafted storyline designed to blur the lines between reality and fiction? The beauty and frustration of modern wrestling is that it's often impossible to know where the story ends and reality begins. Backstage interviews began emerging within the hour. Wrestlers were stopped by interviewers, asked for their reactions to what had transpired. Some expressed shock and concern for Heyman's well-being. Others seemed to suggest that Heyman had pushed too far and gotten exactly what he deserved. The locker room appeared divided, with different factions taking different sides in what was quickly becoming the hottest topic in wrestling. As the show continued, updates on Heyman's condition were sporadically provided. He was being evaluated by medical personnel. He was conscious, but showing signs of possible concussion. He was demanding to speak to WWE management about what had happened. Each update added another layer to the story, keeping viewers engaged and invested in the aftermath of the assault. The final hour of Raw felt like an afterthought compared to the explosive violence that had occurred earlier. Every segment seemed to exist in the shadow of what Triple H had done, with commentators regularly referencing it, with crowd chants breaking out randomly, with the energy in the arena fundamentally altered by the brutality they had witnessed. Social media continued to explode with reactions, theories, and speculation. Fans debated whether this was leading to a match between Triple H and someone representing Heyman. Others wondered if this was the beginning of a larger storyline involving multiple wrestlers and factions. Wrestling podcasts began recording emergency episodes to discuss what had happened. YouTube channels started producing analysis videos. The wrestling world was completely consumed by what they had witnessed. The genius of the angle, if it was indeed a worked storyline, was in its execution. It felt real in a way that most wrestling angles don't. The violence was uncomfortable, the emotion seemed genuine, and the lack of typical wrestling storytelling tropes made it feel more like a legitimate assault than a scripted segment. This is the kind of moment that reminds viewers why they fell in love with wrestling in the first place, the ability to make you forget it's a show and invest emotionally as if it's real. But there were also genuine concerns about the message such violence sends. Wrestling has been trying to move away from its more extreme and dangerous past, implementing safer working conditions and being more conscious of the physical toll the business takes on performers. An angle built around someone brutally assaulting a non-wrestler, even in a fictional context, raises questions about glorifying violence and whether such content is appropriate for WWE's diverse audience. The next day, wrestling news sites were flooded with articles analyzing every aspect of what had occurred. Frame-by-frame breakdowns of the assault were published, examining the techniques used, discussing whether anyone was actually injured, speculating about what would come next. Mainstream sports media also picked up the story, with even non-wrestling outlets covering what had happened, recognizing it as a significant moment in sports entertainment. WWE's social media channels capitalized on the attention, posting clips and teasing future developments. The company's statement was carefully crafted, acknowledging the incident while maintaining the ambiguity about how much was scripted and how much was genuine emotion boiling over. This strategy of keeping fans guessing is classic WWE, using uncertainty to maintain interest and engagement. Paul Heyman's social media remained conspicuously silent in the immediate aftermath, adding to the intrigue. Was he truly injured? Was he plotting his response? Was this silence part of the story or a genuine result of the assault? The lack of communication from the Wiseman himself only fueled more speculation and discussion. Fan forums were alive with debate about what this meant for the future of WWE programming. Some theorized that this was the beginning of a complete restructuring of WWE's power dynamics, with different factions warring for control. Others believed it was setting up a massive match at an upcoming premium live event, possibly involving multiple competitors representing different sides of the conflict. A few skeptics questioned whether the whole thing was real at all or just an elaborate work designed to generate buzz. The physical toll on Heyman, whether scripted or real, appeared significant. Images and videos from the assault showed clear impact, genuine-looking blood, and a level of stiffness in the moves that suggested Triple H hadn't pulled his punches much if at all.